Good afternoon, everyone. We'll be with you shortly. We're just waiting for the participants to arrive. Good afternoon, everyone. We're just waiting for a few more participants to arrive, and we'll be with you shortly. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for joining us for Tea at 3 on Wednesdays. I'm Richard Arnold, Director of Fun for Atlantic Tours, and today our topic is about one of my very favorite places to go. And I've seen a lot of the world, and you're hard pressed to get a destination that is more wonderful than Newfoundland and Labrador. And I often refer to it when I'm out selling as the Alaska of the East, because we have all of those great nuggets you're going to hear about coming up shortly. My guest today is Karen Hatcher, one of our 5-star tour directors that can't wait to get out on the road again. In the last couple of years, with everything on hold, her excitement and enthusiasm will bring everyone to life this afternoon. So I'm going to do a couple of housekeeping items with questions. If you have any, please type them in the question and answer box, and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. And the show itself is being recorded today and will be up on our webinars on our website. So across the top on our website, you'll see webinars and all of our past webinars, and our future registrations for future webinars are there as well. And if you have friends that would like to listen to this that couldn't join us, you'll be sent the link to our webinars, but as I said, they're all there to be listened to at any time. So direct whoever you want to join us. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Karen.
Why, thank you, Richard, and welcome everyone. This is very exciting. Richard commented on Circle Newfoundland and Labrador as one of his favorites. This is my all-time favorite tour in Atlantic Canada. I've done it 17 times over the past few years, and of course, we've had a couple of down years. We're back and ready to go. So the goal of these webinars is, of course, to get bookings so that people don't see me in Nova Scotia all summer, because I'll be traveling to Newfoundland. So welcome, everyone. Let's start talking about our Circle Newfoundland and Labrador tour. Here's an image of Atlantic Canada. This tour originates out of Halifax, but as we're going through and chatting today, there's opportunities for shorter tours. It's a 13-day touring tour, leaving from Halifax, ending in St. John's. But if you only have 7 days in your holiday and want to look at the West Coast, or 8 days and you want to look through central Newfoundland and into St. John's, there are options. So we'll talk about that as we get along. As I said, this tour originates in Halifax. So for those of you from outside of Nova Scotia or the Maritimes, you'll be flying in, you'll be have your transportation to a downtown hotel. And on the first evening, we'll have a meet and greet. So this tour kind of evolves as it starts traveling and the number of passengers increases. And I'll make reference to that as we go along. So the first night in downtown Halifax, we'll do a meet and greet, go over some of the housekeeping details of what's ahead. And what is ahead of you is one of the most authentic touring experiences I have ever witnessed, and that's Newfoundland and Labrador. You know, I'll say everybody put up their hand who've been to Newfoundland, and I'm sure at home some of you are putting it up, and then I'll say, where in Newfoundland have you been? And some will say St. John's. St. John's, a beautiful city, very Newfoundland. However, the true Newfoundland experience is what Atlantic Tours and Travel offers in this 13-day touring out of Halifax, West Coast, Labrador, Central, and East Coast. So here we are in Halifax. Saturday at noonish or so, we'll board one of our motor coaches. This is a wrapped motor coach. Now look on the side, there's a puffin. That is not a life-size puffin. This is a life-size puffin. That's the first thing people think about Newfoundland and Labrador. Look at the big puffins we'll see. No. See how big my little puffin is. So we'll board our motor coach, and our partner is Coach Atlantic here in Halifax. And through COVID, of course, they were the first company in Canada to put in protocols and safety on board the coaches with plexiglass in between the seats. Our drivers are immaculate about the cleanliness of the coach. sanitizing, cleaning, hand sanitizer at the doors, garbage removal. And so you can be rest assured that you are in a very healthy and safe environment traveling with us. So off we go. Our destination now is to Sydney. So we're going to travel from Halifax through Truro, Antigonish, across the Canso Causeway into Cape Breton. And we'll have our first included dinner at a local restaurant in Sydney. And here, some more people may be joining us. So our first group will get on the coach in Halifax. Sydney, we may have more people coming off perhaps one of our maritime tours and want to continue on traveling to Newfoundland. So an included dinner, get our bellies full, and we'll do a short drive back to North Sydney, where we'll then be boarding one of the Marine Atlantic ferries. So we're doing the overnight crossing. And for me, this is what I say is always the way to get to Newfoundland is taking the ferry. We'll get checked in at the little ticket booth, and it's like we're checking into a hotel, because we'll all be assigned berths. So it's just like any other hotel that we're staying at, whoever you're traveling with, that's who you're sharing your room with. And the berths aren't huge, but they have everything you need. They have the beds, there's a TV, you have your own private bathroom, it has a little shower in it. There's even a hair dryer. So what more could you ask? Crossing departs at about 1:45 to midnight. And the overnight crossing is a little bit longer. It's about 7 hours. And we'll be awakened by the announcement of arrival the next morning. And that's your cue to get up and get showered and get dressed. You'll just have carry-on luggage, so there's not a lot to get back to the coach. We'll have a meeting point, and because they like to take us as a group back to our motor coach. And as we're coming into Newfoundland, here's what we're going to be seeing. And this is the beautiful little town of Port Basque. And when you wake up in the morning, you don't have to worry about getting off to the cafeteria to grab breakfast, because once we're back on the coach and arrive in Newfoundland, we're going to go off to an included breakfast. There's a quaint little motel just overlooking the ferry terminal where we'll go, and our feet will be planted on solid ground, and we'll have our first included breakfast together. From there, we're going to start driving the western coast. And this is through an area known as the Codroy Valley. Our destination, or our first stop in the morning, will be Corner Brook. But between Port Basque and Corner Brook, we're going past 15 little communities that make up this Codroy Valley. So when we get to Corner Brook, the driver and tour director will get you to a spot to get out and stretch your legs, grab a cup of coffee, use the washroom facilities. And here we may have more people joining us. These are people who perhaps didn't want to come on the ferry or were flight arrangements. They flew into Deer Lake, and we'll pick them up at a local hotel in Corner Brook. We'll get everybody back on the coach, and our touring shall continue up the western coast. Coast. Look at the mountains that you're starting to see. So all of these 15 communities that make up this Codroy Valley, they're all tucked into the Long Range Mountains. And this is what we're traveling along the entire day, this first touring day in Newfoundland and Labrador. And it's actually an extension of the Appalachian Mountains. So beautiful mountain ranges along the coast. And flipping the wrong way there. Our next stop will be lunch, and we're in the beautiful community of Rocky Harbor. You can see, once again, more mountain ranges in the background. We're now right into the Gulf of St. Lawrence. We'll stop for an included lunch. Continuing on, we're now in Port of Schwa, and this will be the next place that we're going to get off the coach and have a touring experience, and that is at the Port of Schwa National Historic Site. We're going to be into the museum. We're going to learn about the Dorset Indians, the Paleo Eskimos, and then just down the road from the National Historic Site, we're going to come into and see the Point Ritchie Lighthouse. So what might we see there? Well, you might see a moose, you might see some caribou. I will guarantee you're going to see a lighthouse. So.
One of the things, Karen, that I love most about this particular day, we're covering a lot of territory because people don't realize how big Newfoundland and Labrador is. So we get a lot of it under our belts today, but the views are spectacular. You know, when you enter Gros Morne National Park and travel up the coast, I mean, you got the unobstructed views like you're seeing here in this picture off to the Gulf of St. Lawrence and that area, but off to your right, you have the beautiful mountains and fjords. And so to me, it's just a spectacular way to enjoy the scenery and get some of those miles behind us. And truly, I always say it's kind of the Cabot Trail on steroids.
That's an excellent way to describe it. And as Richard said, the scenery is second to none. Mountains, and we're now traveling along the Gulf of St. Lawrence. And we will be kind of backtracking on some of this, and I'll mention that as we're going along, but seeing it from a different perspective, it's a whole new view as you're going along. So we do cover a lot of ground that first day. We're into Port of Schwa, and this National Historic Site, it's a small entity of a facility, but it packs a lot of information and sets a lot of good groundwork for what will be ahead of us in the next few days. From the lighthouse, we're going to make our way right into downtown to the Sea Echo Motel. We're situated right on the harbor. We'll get checked in. We'll have a nice included dinner, and there's a bar attached to the hotel and the restaurant. And they usually have some local live entertainment that night. And sometimes people like to participate in some singing and some dancing. Or maybe you just want to get out after dinner and get out for a walk. Here's the Port of Schwa Harbor. This is directly out of the front door of our motel. And you can see all the shrimp boats that are docked there. And there's a beautiful walk right along the harbor, down to a few gardens. So however you'd like to spend your evening after our included dinner, there's lots to do and scenery to take in. The next morning, we'll get up, we'll get the luggage loaded, we'll have an included breakfast, and we're going to continue traveling north as we'll come into the small community of St. Barb. And here we're going to board the ferry as we make our way over to Labrador. So it's about an hour and a half crossing, and we'll go straight across the Strait of Belle Isle. And as we're doing the crossing, depending on the time of year, we may see some icebergs, we may see some dolphins, we may see some minke whales. So it's a wonderful experience heading across. And the ferry will take us into Blanc-Sablon, Quebec, is where the ferry will dock. And then we'll have a very short drive that will then take us into Labrador. And as we're traveling along the coast of Labrador, we'll be coming in through an area known as the Pinware Valley. And this is very glacier driven as far as how it was formed. And this particular picture that I had taken, this was taken in June, so you can still see some of the snow that's along the hills, but just some beautiful scenery through the valley. And our destination, continuing north in Labrador, is to the Red Bay National Historic Site. This is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and UNESCO standing for United Nations Education, Scientific, Cultural Organization. And here we're going to learn about the whalers, the Basque whalers that came over in the 1500s. As I advance the slide and you look at this image, as you're looking out into the Gulf of St. Lawrence, kind of the top of Newfoundland, if you continued straight across. But where the kind of the bay comes in, there's a little blue building down to the left-hand side, and this is the actual National Historic Site, the museum itself. And we'll have a guided tour throughout the facility. They'll be telling us about the whalers. We'll be learning about what brought them into this very remote community in this section of Labrador. Once we experience the National Historic Site, we'll make the drive. We'll kind of backtrack a little bit back through the Pinware Valley. We'll see a beautiful gorge. We'll see lighthouses off into the distance. And our destination is Lancel, that we're overnighting in Labrador, which is a great thing to be able to tell people that you did. We'll get checked in. We'll have an included dinner. There's a little bar attached to our hotel as well if you wanted to go in for a nightcap. But also after dinner, you might want to take a walk. And this is within walking distance, this beautiful beach. And if it's a beautiful evening, and we're in Labrador, so we're quite north, the sun, it's later setting in June, July, and August to get out for that evening walk. But that sandy beach area, a couple things. There are times that I've seen icebergs or bergy bits, smaller pieces of iceberg right along the shore. There's times that I've seen the capelins spawning, and they're coming right onto the sand. Or go down on the beach, take your socks and shoes off, and dip your toes into the Strait of Belle Isle. The one thing I can tell you, it's cold, but you can brag that you've gone to the beach in Labrador. So come back, nestle in for the night. We'll have an included breakfast in the morning, load up the coach. We're going to head back on the same ferry, same crossing, back from Blanc-Sablon, Quebec to St. Barb, Newfoundland. And our travels are going to continue traveling north. So once again, we continue, the long range mountains will be on the right, Gulf of St. Lawrence will be on the left as we head to the most northern part of Newfoundland. And here we're going to be making a stop at Lancel Meadows National Historic Site. This is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And what we're going to learn about today are the Vikings and the Norse people, how they arrived and why they arrived in this particular area. On this image, you can see parts of a boardwalk. We're going to have a private guided tour with one of the Parks Canada guides, and we'll be walking through along that boardwalk to learn about the excavation that took place, how they knew that the Norse people landed here and what these Vikings were looking for and what brought them. And what you're seeing there is a replica of a longhouse, and here's a closer image of it, that we'll be able to get right inside and talk to some people in period costume and learn how they lived and why they were here at Lancel Meadows. Of course, there is an image of our Vikings as they're heading off to work. So this is truly an authentic experience and a wonderful Parks Canada experience. So from Lancel Meadows, our destination is actually St. Anthony, a little town very north. If we are all saying it's St. Anthony, it's a 4-syllable word, but in Newfoundland, it's 2 syllables, Snantony. Snantony is where we're going. We're going to be going to the Haven Inn overnight. But as we're coming into town, we're going to make another stop, and we're going to head right out to the lighthouse for some pictures. And for here, you're overlooking the North Atlantic. And this is significant because we're going to experience a boat tour on the North Atlantic the next day. And this is just an image from the lighthouse looking back to the Bight, and a Bight is a small cove.
We always call this Iceberg Alley along there. There's no shortage. Come June, early July, the best time for the icebergs. But this whole stretch right on down the coast of Newfoundland is Iceberg Alley, and so often you see them. And as you know, Karen, they change their look daily and throughout the day because 90% is under the water. So as they melt and get stuck in these harbors, they flip and change their angles. It's quite a spectacular view.
And Richard's correct. These icebergs start coming down in April. Where are they coming from? Well, they're breaking off the glaciers up in Baffin Island, and sometimes it can take 2 to 3 years for an iceberg to migrate its way to the north of Newfoundland. And so in June and July, the latest I've experienced an iceberg in Newfoundland and Labrador was the first week of August. But usually that last week of July is when they're starting to make their exit. And people always say, well, where do the icebergs go? Well, the icebergs melt. This Iceberg Alley is basically from Greenland all the way from the top of Newfoundland right down past St. John's. Recorded was an iceberg down as low as Bermuda one year. So we are truly in Iceberg Alley. Once we get a little coast experience, because this is Newfoundland and we're on an island, we're going to make our way back into town, and we'll be checking into the Haven Inn. We'll get everybody situated in their rooms, and we'll have a beautifully appointed group dinner. They have a private dining room for us, and we'll have an included dinner with some entertainment and a lively evening at the Haven Inn. There's a little bar located there as well for anybody looking for that nightcap. Get a good night's sleep, and then the next morning we'll have an included breakfast together. And then this is the day that your tour director will probably tell you to wear almost everything you have in your suitcase. Because where are we going? We are going out on a whale watching, iceberg watching tour. So depending on the time of year, the whales that we're looking for are humpback whales. They usually start arriving in this part of Newfoundland the last part of June. And what is drawing them, they've spent the winter in the Caribbean. They've been down in the Dominican Republic where they give birth. They save up their eating until they come to Newfoundland. And it's a little fish, the capelin, that they've come here to eat. So this morning, and it could be July, dress in layers. As Richard will tell his groups, and I do as well, dress like an onion. So you can just peel it off if you don't need as many clothes on, or you're dressed in layers so you're warm. So the boat that you do see there, that's the boat that we'll be going out on with Northland Discovery Boat Tours. And we're looking for humpback whales and icebergs. And as Richard said, an iceberg changes daily. The view of an iceberg can change while you're out on the boat tour. I've seen icebergs that they're doing what they call calving, where a piece will drop off and the iceberg will roll. So we're with very well-trained marine people, Skipper Terry, and the commentary that we get on board. is second to none. And not only are we looking for icebergs, but we're also looking for those humpback whales. And will we see them? Well, neither the icebergs nor the humpbacks are good on reservations. Atlantic Tours and Travel is perfect on making all the reservations for hotels and sightseeing, but you know, those reservations for the whales get lost. However, I have not once yet been out with this particular operator that we haven't seen what we've gone looking for. So it is an outdoor experience. This is an image of an iceberg that I took on one of my trips, and you know, you can see the veining through it. That is just pure glacier. Then when it melts, it is the purest of water. And actually, there's a company in St. John's that you can get iceberg water, and they have an iceberg harvesting license. They harvest the iceberg, they bottle it, and it is the purest of water that you can get. So after we come back from our boat tour, we're feet based on solid ground, we're going to go into a museum, and this is called the Grenfell Center. You will be learning about Grenfell while you're over in Labrador, but he's a doctor who came to the remote areas of Newfoundland and Labrador and saw the need for medical attention. And his first experiences was bringing a medical boat into the area and serviced all of these tiny remote communities. And this Grenfell Center is about the legacy that he left and the health authority that is still in place under his name. So we'll spend some time touring through the Grenfell Center, and you'll learn more about this magnificent medical person who just saw the need of the people in the local area. Once we leave the museum, we're going to just make a little stop in downtown St. Anthony. Everybody can get off, get a bite to eat, use the washroom facilities. We'll do what's called a scatter lunch. There's several places, grab a bite to eat and just enjoy our last hour or so in the local area. We'll get back on the coach, and then we're going to start making our way south. And as we're traveling south, we're going to do a little bit of backtracking, but it's a different view. The Gulf of St. Lawrence will now be on your right-hand side. The Long Range Mountains will be on your left-hand side. And we have a bit of a drive in the afternoon, but we position ourselves for what's ahead of us for the next day. And so we're coming into the small community of Cowhead, and we're going to be staying at the Chala Bay Motel. And the most exciting part of our arrival at the Chala Bay Motel, we're going to be here for 2 nights. So when you get checked in, you can make a mess in your room, unpack everything, toss it all around. We're in the beautiful, beautiful location of Cowhead, but Chala Bay Motel located right on the water. As you get into the facility in the dining room, you're looking over Chala Bay. And here, there's lots to do. We're going to have an included dinner. And after dinner, if you come out of the hotel and turn left, 1.5 kilometers will take you down to a beautiful sandy beach. Come out of the front door, turn right, about 1.25 kilometers will take you over to the wharf and the little fishing community. You walk over a causeway. Sometimes you can see eider ducks. And there's also a theater that's on the property of Chala Bay Motel. This is an extra, so if anybody was interested, your tour director will, ahead of the tour even starting, make contact with the Gros Morne Theatre Festival to see if there are shows playing on one of the 2 nights that were there. Sometimes it's both nights. Set aside some tickets, and you'll be able to go and purchase your tickets when we arrive. So 2 nights we're staying here at Chala Bay. Now, we may also have people joining us here this particular night. People who are coming in for the Gros Morne touring experience and doing the eastern part of the tour. So your tour director will meet with the new folks who have been transferred by a local driver and guide and did a little touring to get up to Cowhead. And then we'll all have a reception together. We'll be able to do a meet and greet. You'll see the new folks joining us, introduce yourselves, and off we go to a wonderful included dinner. The next day is a day of choices. So Gros Morne National Park is what we will be touring tomorrow. And here is the mountain of Gros Morne. It is the signature mountain of this UNESCO World Heritage Site. So what the choice is, and this needs to be made at the time of your booking, it's one of 2 boat tours and touring. So the first one that you have an option for is that of Western Brook Pond. Now, this particular one is magnificent. You go right into the fjord. It's a freshwater fjord, which is very different than what you would see through the Scandinavian countries. how the mountains formed, raised this bed of water, and it's a magnificent journey as you travel in a guided boat tour with commentary and entertainment that day. What is important to know that it's a 3-kilometer hike to get to the boat tour. So just judging your walking pace, you need to be doing 1 kilometer in about 15 minutes. We have about a 45-minute timeline to do the walk. We cover 3 kilometers. You go in, so you'll have a local guide with you. So as a tour director, the tour director on the tour goes on the second excursion. And so we'll have a local guide. You will not be left unsupervised. Don't worry about that. You'll have a picnic lunch with you because there's an included lunch that day, and Western Brook Pond. After Western Brook Pond on that excursion, you'll be taking in the Broom Point fishing premises. And this is just a very unique family facility and how they lived. I mean, look at the rugged coastline, and the image of the building is where they did their work and their fishing. And you'll learn all about the Mach family here. The second option for touring is Gros Morne National Park and a Bonne Bay boat tour. So with this one, we come into Norris Point, we get on a catamaran style vessel with Captain Reg and the team, and we get right out into Bonne Bay. We'll be going along the rock formations. We'll learn about Gros Morne National Park and the geology, and we'll have some time at the Discovery Center where we're going to learn. This is the main tourist information center, main museum for Gros Morne National Park. Before that, this group also has a picnic lunch, and we have a very unique destination where we'll be having our box lunch that day prior to coming into the Discovery Center. And then part of this excursion takes us to what really brought Gros Morne onto the map and made it the World UNESCO Heritage Site, and that's the tablelands. And this is the image, an aerial image of it. You can actually see down in the water a little boat, and that's probably the boat that this tour on Bonne Bay will be taking. But these are the tablelands. This piece of land should be at the bottom of the ocean, but through the tectonic plates and the shifting, it was brought to the surface. So it's a very unique, only 5 or 6 places in the world can you experience this. So on the Bonne Bay tour, we will actually be taking a drive to the base of the tablelands where you'll be able to get out and walk along this very, very unique area. So whether
Karen, that's all well said. The fact that there's the 2 choices, like I said, the landlocked fjord is absolutely beautiful, an excellent experience. And those that like a little more exercise, it's perfectly suited for them. Where this one, you could drive on the motor coach, get off the motor coach, get on your boat, and have a beautiful experience on a fjord that's not landlocked. So there's still opportunities to see whales is possible. You're not going to see icebergs down in this area or anything, but whales and lots of eagles when I'm there. And so just we're very proud of being, to my knowledge, one of the few companies that offer the choice for our clients in the Gros Morne, and also allowing them that experience for, we were always being asked about the landlocked fjord, but you can't do on group tours. So it has to be sort of suited to all of your passengers. So by having the choice, they do have that option to do the landlocked one.
Absolutely, and like I said, it's a gentle pace. I mean, 1 kilometer in 15 minutes. That it's not a hard walk. It's crushed gravel. It is a slight incline all the way up, getting to where the boat launch is, which just means it's a slight decline coming back out. So judge your athletic ability according to that. You cannot go wrong. Either of the boat tours. The commentary is amazing. You will learn about the geological formation of Gros Morne National Park, and with a little entertainment tossed in on either way. So, and the local guide that we have working with Atlantic Tours and Travel, absolutely amazing, and you get a little local flair there as well. So after a day of touring, both groups will be arriving back at Chala Bay Motel about the same time, and you time to sit back and reflect on the experience that you had for the day. We'll have an included dinner. at the Chala Bay Motel. And then this is the image of the theater that I mentioned, the Gros Morne Theater Festival, which is right on property. The other great thing, we're at the same motel for 2 nights. There's laundry facilities. So if anybody needs to get their dainties done, you know, there's a little laundromat across the way. You'll have time in between our included dinner. And as people say, well, we haven't included dinner. Will we have time to get to the theater? Absolutely. Our dinner reservations are made such that you can walk out the front door from dinner, and within 3 minutes, you'll be in your seats at this.
And I love the sunsets here with the beach. I mean, the nice horseshoe shaped beach there. You know, it's not a real sandy beach, but I mean, sitting in the dining room and looking from some of your rooms out over the sunsets are spectacular.
Absolutely, it is a little piece of heaven. And there's lots of places to get out and walk and stretch your legs, and it's only, I mean, it's a very small community, 500 people, but there is lots to see. And the family that operates this particular motel where we're staying, they look after everybody, as all of the hotels where we stay. As I start this tour, when I'm meeting the group, what you're going to experience in Newfoundland is different to anything else you've ever experienced. We're in remote places. We're in mom and pop operations. You know, will you have Wi-Fi? Absolutely. Will it be good Wi-Fi? Absolutely not. But the beds are comfortable, the food is fantastic, and the people are absolutely outstanding. And this is
authentic. I mean, it's not. I mean, here you're going to meet. Most of the family works in the business at this particular property, but that's throughout. And people always say, what category are your hotels? And I always say, we use the best available in the areas that we're going. So 3.5 star and up generally. But, you know, so to me, it's all about the experience. You'll get all the amenities you would in a modern city hotel, but with a unique flavor.
That's a good way to describe it. So we wake up the next morning, we'll have an included breakfast, we'll get the coach loaded up, and we're going to continue our traveling south. We'll get another view of the beautiful Gros Morne Mountain as we're making our exit out of Gros Morne National Park. However, we're going to make one more stop, and this is at the lighthouse, where we'll get in. We'll have a Parks Canada guide. We'll talk to us about the lighthouse keeper and the significance and the positioning of this lighthouse. And what I always like to point out, if you look to this image on the left-hand side, there's a flagpole with multiple flags on it. Well, the Parks Canada guide, as soon as they arrive at 10 o'clock when they open, they fly a word of the day. So there's a little legend there, and it's a little game I like to play is, what is today's word of the day? And anyway, we'll have this will be our last full touring experience for those of you who've only booked the first part of the tour, because from the lighthouse, we're going to make our way into Deer Lake. We'll drop off at an area that has 5 or 6 different places to grab a bite to eat. We'll do another, what's called a scatter lunch. And for those of you making your departure, we'll be bidding our farewells. You'll stay on the motor coach, and the driver and your tour director will get you to the airport in ample time to make sure you're catching your flight and connections as you make your departure from Newfoundland. So for the group that's continuing on after our lunch, we'll get back on the coach and we'll have a little bit of drive today. We're coming back onto the Trans-Canada Highway. We're coming off of the remote 430 highway that we've been traveling for days, get onto the Trans-Canada Highway, start making our way east. We'll head through Grand Falls, Windsor, and our destination will be into Gander. And our first kind of touring stop will be at the North Atlantic Aviation Museum. It's a small museum, but it's a museum with a punch. This is all about Gander, and this is about the significance of the Gander Airport, the positioning of it in the most northerly point in North America for air aviation, and how before the large jumbo jets, every single plane traveling transcontinental had to stop in Gander. And of course, with jets becoming bigger and carrying more fuel, that kind of started petering off a little bit. However, today, and still today, every single flight talks to Gander Air Traffic Control. So we'll spend some time in the museum, learn about Gander and flight, but also in more recent history, what we're also going to learn about is Come From Away. This is the Broadway musical. This was inspired by what happened in Gander in September of 2001, when flights were diverted and 38 flights were brought into this remote area of Newfoundland, and how Newfoundland hospitality came on the map, where as many people who live in the town arrived in these 38 planes, and how they were taken off to different locations. So for those of you who have seen Come From Away, the musical was in Toronto, it still is playing in New York, it's in London, it's in Australia. If you haven't had a chance, put it on your to-do list. But we will learn more about it as we make our way in Gander. So after the museum, we'll make our way over to Sinbad's Hotel, where we'll be checking in for the evening. We'll have an included, no, tonight actually we don't have an included dinner. So here's what you're going to learn about Gander and Sinbad. So there's a restaurant, there's a pub right across the street. There's a mall, it's the Gander Mall. There's a grocery store, there's a liquor store, and there's multiple probably a dozen different eating establishments within walking distance. So tonight's your night to get what you would like for dinner. It's not a reservation time. It's not an assigned meal. Some people just like to go to the grocery store and get a little salad and go to the adult store next door and get a bottle of something and have a little picnic in their room. So the options are there to just get out and enjoy your time in Gander. Get a good night's sleep, because we've got a full touring day the next day. When you get up in the morning, we'll have an included breakfast at the hotel. Get on the motor coach and off to Twilling Gate we go. And Twilling Gate, we're heading out onto the peninsula. We're going to be traveling along what's known as the Road to the Isles. It's a series of causeways because we're on a series of islands making our way. And our first touring stop is a very unique stop called Prime Berth. And this is the upper stages of prime berth. We're going to learn about the cod fishery and the significance of cod fishing in Newfoundland and the deterioration of it in the early 1990s, and it's coming back to life now. So we'll be with Captain Dave, and his wife Christine looks after the gift shop, friend Bill with some entertainment, and we'll come into the facility, and here's a look looking down into the lower part of prime berth, where all of these buildings will have access. There's a little iceberg museum. You'll see a baleen from a whale. There's a couple of skeletons of whales, and we'll get into where the fishermen would bring in their fish and what they would do when the cod came in. So we'll have some time at prime berth. Continuing on, we'll make our way into the beautiful little town of Twilling Gate, and this is right down in Twilling Gate Harbor. Now we're going to kind of continue through town and head out to Crow Head to the Long Point Lighthouse. And you can see the lighthouse in this image. This is more for a photo stop. I mean, we'll see this beautiful lighthouse, but we're really looking at the rock formations from the platforms. And I'm just going back to the lighthouse. You're looking out into the North Atlantic for these beautiful, spectacular views. Depending on the time of year, we may see icebergs. And you never know, you may see some humpback whales. You'll definitely see fishing boats, but it's more the images and the rock formations. We'll make our way back into town, and we'll come into the Anchor Inn to Georgie's restaurant for an included lunch. And we're right down along the water. So after lunch, although we have our reservations, once lunch is served and you want to get out and explore around, you'll have some time to do that. You might want to head from the front of the building down to the water, or we're going to set a departure time just up the hill from us at the Twilling Gate Museum. And this is an old rectory of the Anglican Church, which is now a museum that you'll be able to tour through. They have a beautiful gift shop, washroom facilities, but just getting out and enjoying Twilling Gate as a very unique, beautiful little remote town in Newfoundland. We'll backtrack on the Road to the Isles as we did, and we'll make our way back into Gander. We'll have an afternoon stop to stretch your legs, grab a coffee or something cold to drink. And now we're continuing our travel along the Trans-Canada Highway to yet another national park. And we're going to make our way to Terra National Park. Here we're coming into the Marine Interpretation Center. They have a very interesting touch tank. We'll learn about water life. We'll learn about the animals that are roaming through this park and down along the water frontage. There's some trails if you're not as interested in the touch tank and want to get out and walk around. There's a little cafe, a little ice cream bar there, a nice little gift shop. And so we'll spend a little bit of time here at Terra National Park. Our drive then continues into an area known as Clarenville, and we'll be making our way to the Quality Hotel for another 2-night stay. And so we'll get everybody checked into your room. We'll have an included dinner this evening, and then get a good night's sleep, because tomorrow we have another very full touring day. Tomorrow morning, we'll load up the coach. Luggage stays behind because we're there for 2 nights. And we are going to make our way out on the peninsula of Bonavista. And here's the Bonavista Lighthouse. And this is really exciting because this is a lighthouse that we are going to get access to. And as you look at it, at the very top of the lighthouse in the glass, you can see the image where the lighting structure will be, which we'll be able to get right up in there and see. So you'll see the rooms, the kitchen and the parlor and the bedrooms of where the lighthouse keeper lived, but we can get right up into the mechanism. So depending on the size of our group, we might split into 2, and half will go to the lighthouse, half will wander around outside in these beautiful images that you see from the lighthouse area. And here at the Bonavista Lighthouse, it might be our first opportunity to see a puffin. And remember my little life-size puffin. There is a little puffin colony just off to the right of the lighthouse that we have had opportunity in the past, depending on the time of year. So we may see some puffins for the first time here. We may see icebergs, we may see humpback whales, once again, depending on the time of year. So we'll continue our little drive. We're going to do a little almost off-roading here as we make our way around the turn and through a pasture. We'll see some horses to the Dungeons Provincial Park. And this is a collapsed sea cave. This is just a photo opportunity. We'll make a stop and grab some pictures here. And this was me last year. I got to the backside of the dungeons, kind of walked around, looking at it from a different angle. Atlantic Tours, the company with the kilts, so you never know when you may see your tour director in a kilt, and I have a few of them, so I wear them a lot. So this is, look at the images behind me. I mean, this is Bonavista as we're coming from the lighthouse and making our way back into town. Coming into town, we head right down to the water, and this is the Harbor Quarters Inn. We're heading into Skipper's Restaurant for an included lunch. And the image that you're going to see from the restaurant is that of the harbor. We'll be right down on the water. Here's the fishing boats, and the blue building that you see in the background, that's Ye Matthew Legacy. This is an after lunch experience that we're going to have. So we're having lunch together, an included lunch for those of you who eat a little bit faster than others once dessert and tea and coffee are served. If you want to get out and experience the waterfront and walk over to the museum, by all means do so. It's about a 7 or 8 minute walk over there. Otherwise, everybody else will hop on the coach, we'll head over there. And what this building is and the unique shape of it, as you look at the blue building, you can see gray that are some doors. Inside is a replica of the ship that John Cabot sailed on as he came in and founded Bonavista. Buena Vista, beautiful sight. And so we will be able to get right on the replica of the Ye Matthew Legacy. From there, we're going to take another drive just down the road, about 2 minutes, and we'll make a stop at the Mach Beggar Plantation. This is a provincial historic site where we'll be able to tour, and we'll learn about the Mach Beggar Plantation and the significance. After that, now we have a little bit of a drive, it's about an hour and 10 minutes or so. And so you've had lunch, you've been touring all morning, you might want to close your eyes on the coach, and that's fine. We're going to get a map in hand for what our next destination is, and that is Trinity Historic Sites. And this is the beautiful living museum, is the best way to describe it. We're going to be coming right into town, and if you look down in the middle of town over to the left, you can see the Atlantic Tours wrapped coach, and that's where the coach will be parked. You will get a ticket and you'll be able to access 11 or 12 of the buildings, from the houses, the forge, the post office, to the church, and you'll be able to get out and just enjoy the beauty of Trinity. There's an amazing chocolate shop for anybody with a sweet tooth. There's a restaurant if you wanted to go and get a cup of coffee. There's a couple of those as well. But you'll be able to walk through this beautiful little town. And we're actually staying on a little bit later in this town because we're going to head to the Erickson premises, which is one of the buildings. It'll be pointed out to you as we come into town. And here we're going to have an included dinner. So we have a full day of touring, breakfast at the hotel in the morning. We're out for lunch as we're touring in Bonavista. We're out for dinner as we're in Trinity. And once everybody's bellies are full, we'll get back on the coach and take the just over an hour drive back to the quality hotel in Clarenville, get a good night's sleep. Because the next day, we're going to pack up in the morning. We're going to have an included breakfast together. And our destination is the big city of St. John's, but we're going to make a stop on the way there. And this stop is a very, very unique stop. And I'm going to bring it up. It's the town of Brigus. The reason that we tour into the town of Brigus is because of a sea captain. His name is Captain Bob Bartlett. And I knew nothing about Captain Bob Bartlett until I started doing tours to Newfoundland with Atlantic Tours and Travel back in 2017. And in my opinion, this should be taught in all of the schools, an amazing sea captain. Some of you might be more familiar with Brigus these days because of an HGTV home renovation show called Rock Solid Builds. I love it. If you haven't watched it, set up your PVRs and DVRs to record it. Rock Solid Builds. It's based out of Brigus. They're home renovators, and it's home renovation with a flair. There are subtitles in most of the shows because of the Newfoundland. A hint of a Newfoundland accent might appear. So we're.
I absolutely love the show. This is the second season. I've watched the first season. The characters are wonderful, and I mean, they're just real Newfoundlanders, and but the scenery and I mean, what you're seeing in these pictures, but you know, everything they do is just a lot of fun. I mean, you finish the show, you laugh, but you get to see this wonderful scenery that you're going to see on our tour. So it's a spectacular experience.
Absolutely. So Brigus, a beautiful town, population is just shy of 800 people. But here's the destination that we will have access to, and that's the Hawthorne Cottage National Historic Site. And this is the homestead of Captain Bob Bartlett. So you will learn about him as we're coming into Brigus. You'll have access to be able to go to the National Historic Site if you choose, or walk through town. You get the images on Conception Bay. Look, somebody's hanging some sheets out on the line there. Or right downtown, there's two of these little canals that the water flows through. There's a nice little coffee shop at the end of the main street where we park the coach. So we'll spend about an hour here in Brigus. So once we're back on the coach, we're heading into the big city. We've been remote for days, and now we are heading into the metropolis of the city of St. John's. And the beautiful colorful houses. In this image, I know what I'm looking at, the museum at the top of the hill, kind of up to the left, the rooms, the cathedral. You'll have a map in hand, because as we're traveling along, everyone will be given out their St. John's map. We'll get you right downtown and drop you off. We're arriving at lunchtime, so we're sending you off to get lunch on your own. But we're not sending you out blind. So we'll go through the maps. I'll point out where the restaurants are, the gift shops. And then we're going to have a designated pickup time. So as you're off having lunch, the driver and I will shoot over to the hotel and get the luggage dropped off at the Delta. And when we come back to pick you up at the designated spot where we dropped you off, we're going to have a guest on board. And this is the perfect timing to have this guest, and that is a local guide. Because this afternoon, we're doing a driving tour through St. John's in anticipation of showing you the beautiful city itself, but also tomorrow afternoon, you have a completely free afternoon and evening. So now's the time to plot and scheme what you would like to do on your own tomorrow. So with our local guide and myself, we can help point things out if there's anything specific that you want to see or do. So with a local guide, here we're going to be driving around, see some of the Jelly Bean Row houses as they're referred to. We'll be up to Cabot Tower on top of Signal Hill. This is an image looking down into the Narrows, the narrowest part where all the ships will come into the harbor of St. John's. And, you know, an image of Kitty Vitty, a beautiful little fishing community that will be able to take the coach down and get some pictures. So there's lots to do and see in this absolutely beautiful city. And having a local guide with some local flair and local stories. Just after hearing your tour director talk for all this time, it is nice to have an invited guest on board the coach. So we'll experience St. John's firsthand, and then we'll make our way to the Delta, where we're checking in for 2 nights. Your luggage has already been dropped off, so it'll be delivered to the room when we arrive. We'll have a little reception. We'll get the key packages from the hotel. Go up and kick back and review what the touring that we've done. You'll have time if you wanted to get out for a little walkabout. We're really about a 5-minute walk from the downtown core, where we had just dropped you off for lunch that day. So it's a nice moderate walk to get you back downtown. However, we're all going to get together tonight for dinner. We have an included dinner with some entertainment at the hotel. And this is our farewell dinner. It's not the last touring day because we're still touring tomorrow, but this is the last night that our driver is going to be with us. So the Delta puts on a nice Newfoundland feast for us. As I said, we've got some entertainment, but it's some time to tell some stories and talk about the things that we've done and seen, and plan for tomorrow afternoon when you do have a free afternoon. However, in the morning, as I said, our touring's not over yet. Next morning we get up, we have a short drive out to an area known as Bay Bulls, and we're heading to a place called Gatheralls. That's the family name of the business, because we are going out on another boat cruise. And this boat cruise is taking us out to the Ecological Bird Reserve. So as I said, when we were in Bonavista, we may see some puffins there. Well, where we're going on this particular boat tour, we are going to see puffins. There are hundreds of thousands of nesting pairs of puffins. And if you go out on this boat cruise and don't see a puffin, then you must have dozed off. Like, that's the only way that you're not going to see a puffin. Of these beautiful little birds. They're birds that mate for life, and we'll have commentary on our boat cruise. Now, we may also see humpback whales depending on the time of year. I've also seen icebergs depending on the time of year. And you never know. There are humpback whales, but I've also seen dolphins. So it's a boat cruise that will experience once again the coast. It's the birds, and it's not only the puffins that are there. It's there are 8 or 10 different type of nesting birds that are on this bird reserve that will be going around. So after we come back in from our boat tour, we're then going to head off to Cape Spear National Site. And this is the most easterly point in North America. So we'll get off the coach, we'll head down on the platforms, and we'll head down by the water. Here's a view looking back from the most easterly point, that what looks like a little piece of Lego on top of the cliff right across the water. That's Cabot Tower. That's where we were the day before at Signal Hill. And that's an image that's going into the narrows of the city of St. John's. So this is our last kind of group touring together. We'll get back on the coach at Cape Spear. We'll make our way back to the Delta, and we'll have our final farewells as everybody's getting off the coach. And you have a free afternoon and evening. Now, as your tour director is still there with you. So in the afternoon, we'll set designated time if anybody needs assistance in doing airline check-ins for flights the next day. Your tour director is there to help you with that. There was a business center at the hotel, and then there wasn't. There was a printer, but we will find a way to get you checked in for those of you who need the guidance and help with that. Or your tour director will be there to point you in the right direction for the sightseeing and areas that you're going to get off to see. As I said, you're within walking distance. George Street is the famous street in St. John's. It has pub after pub after pub, live entertainment after live entertainment after live entertainment, lots of gift shops. Get those last trinkets that you might want to take home with you and experience your last evening in St. John's. The next day, and here's a layout of all of the itinerary that I've just been talking about. The next day, flights are dependent on when you've booked them. And you also have a post-tour option as well. So when you're calling into the office, if you wanted to stay on into St. John's longer, if you wanted to head off to St. Pierre-Miquelon, there's options that you can do touring, or you can depart out of St. John's. As a tour director, I'm flying out of St. John's as well. The driver has left the day before because he's got to get the coach back to Nova Scotia. So I may see some of you at the airport, but we've had our official goodbyes the day before. So that morning you'll have an included breakfast, and then your journey has ended and we have bid everybody farewell. So that's our Circle Newfoundland in a nutshell. Newfoundland and Labrador, one of the most authentic touring experiences ever. If you haven't experienced it, now's the time. if you know of somebody who might want to go, we have an amazing team of tour directors who are trained in Newfoundland and Labrador. And although I did the webinar today, any tour director that you get on the coach with, you will have an experience of a lifetime. And what does that come down to? The amazing accommodations we stay in, the food that we're eating, but most importantly, the people that you will meet along the way. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, Karen. As always, it's always a pleasure doing this with you, and you do an amazing job. You're an amazing tour director. She's also a bagpiper, so you never know that she talks about her kilts, but there's all kinds of special talents that Karen has in addition to being a great host and an ambassador for this region. The other thing I should throw in there is if you're a non-flyer from Nova Scotia, you can also come back to Halifax on the motor coach with the driver. The only difference is you give up your free afternoon in St. John's. So just keep that in mind. We pride ourselves in being masters of customization. So when Karen talked about you could buy the first part of the trip or the second part of the trip, we know that not everyone has 2 weeks for their vacation. So that's why we split it in half. So you can do the West Coast, which we call the Biking Trail, and we can do one we call the Explorer, which gives you the time in Grossmoor and then does the East Coast. So those are both available as 1 week options. We also combine this trip with our Atlantic Maritimes tour. So people that come from around the world often will come do the Maritimes first and then Newfoundland, and that becomes a nice 23-day experience to enjoy everything. We do have some questions that come in. Are there washrooms on the buses? Absolutely. We always ask you to use the spots that we stop at because they are pit toilets, so what you deposit can come back with interest, but they certainly are there to be used, and your tour director will advise you on the days that you may need to use the coach more than you would on certain other days. So yes, there and always available. Do you have assigned seats on the bus? Well, during normal times, we did. We will see how 2022 pans out as far as seat rotation. But as of during COVID, we have been assigning seats throughout the duration of the trip, but we'll see how this season goes. And as Karen said, we're following all public health protocols, and we finally feel like we're past what's going on, and we're raring to go. The bookings have been strong, in fact, and we're very excited about the season looking very well. So don't leave booking too much longer. And on these trips, you could also look at until the end of February a reduced deposit if you decide to sign up on the trip. What happens with the boat tours during rough weather? Once again, the boat tours are all very professionally run. They make those decisions, and Karen can speak to that a little bit better than me because she's out there more often, but rarely do they not run. Often you might get the time switch to a morning, et cetera, et cetera. But Bombay, for example, is a little bit more protected. So things can happen, but we do our very best to follow the advice of the captains.
And then that's a very good point. In all of my times traveling, I have never had a boat tour outright canceled. If we're watching the weather very quickly, and as a tour director, we go out with plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, and usually plan E in case we need it. So if something happens that there's inclement weather coming, perhaps we can switch a day's itinerary, one day for the next. You will still get to take everything in, but it's just a matter of making sure that it is the captain's call, and we would never go out if it wasn't safe, but we might jig the itinerary a little bit to make sure that the inclusions are there. However, weather and safety comes absolute first, so they are all based on weather permitting, but as I've said, I've never had it outright canceled. We've just been creative in the times and the way that we present the itinerary. So a tour director in their sporn or their back pocket always has a plan B and plan C.
And I know that we had also got a supply of water capes at one point too to help cover people over, and we do keep those and send them on our trips. Thinking of the last question here is thinking of August tours. Reclose is a short and t-shirt weather. I would still say there can be days that are absolutely beautiful, could be in the 20s Celsius, or within 10 minutes, it could all change based on a wind direction change. So the best advice I always say is dress like an onion. You can always take off, but you want to be prepared for everything in Newfoundland. So I think that answered all the questions. Once again, thank you, Karen, for doing an amazing presentation and being exactly who you are. That's why I love you so much. And Karen and I go way back. We were roommates at one point in our lives. And when she retired from a previous job, she said, my favorite job ever was tour directing. And so I said, you're hired, and we're thrilled to have her back with us. Our next tea at 3 on Wednesdays, and now remember, it's every other week. So we're going to talk about Quebec City and the Gaspé Peninsula. That'll be March 2nd at 3 p.m. Remember, everyone that's listened today, your name goes in for a draw, which we're drawing for in June, where they get a $500 travel voucher to use on any of our trips. And so mention that to your friends. And I guess that's all I have for now. The future presentations coming up, like Canada by Rail, Autumn in Vermont and New Hampshire. We're going to talk about cruising 101, those that haven't cruised before. And so there's lots of things coming up in the coming weeks. And we're always open to your suggestions as well. So Peggy in reservations is always happy to talk to you and make notes. And today, I guess we've gone a little long. It is 4 o'clock. So I'm going to say thank you again, Karen, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us.